This far out from the 2020 election, I can't say how things are going to go, but there are people whose job it is to try to make as accurate predictions as possible with the information that we have. And joining us now on the show is someone who did better than almost anyone else in predicting the last cycle, the 2018 midterms. This is Dr. Rachel Bitecofer. Welcome to the Damage Report.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Glad to have you here. I'm excited to talk about 2020, but before we get into that, tell me about your 2018 predictions.
Sure.
You were more accurate than a lot of the very well-known forecasts, correct?
Yeah, so actually, technically speaking, most of the big name forecasters or handicappers, as some are called, were accurate. We all ended up there together at the end. My innovation was to be accurate first, and not just a little bit first, but months and months before the election. I put out a forecast that predicted Democrats would pick up 42 seats in the House. And as you know, they would have had 41, probably, if not for the malfeasance in North Carolina 9. So what made my forecast innovative was that it was arguing a new theory about voter behavior based in the polarized era and really focused on something called negative partisanship, which is the passion that the other side feels towards the opposition party and the role that that plays in terms of energy for elections, right? So I knew that a big blue wave was going to roll through here, the state of Virginia, in the 2017 elections after the election of Trump. And then based on what happened here, I designed a statistical model to anticipate where it would hit in 2018. And I used that to predict with really good accuracy which districts. And a lot of them were on the other people's radar, but some of them weren't. Not when I showed up and said, no, these districts are all going to flip. A lot of the Orange County districts were maybe on the radar as toss-ups, but I knew for sure that they were going to flip over based on my model.
So including this concept of negative partisanship, focusing on that more, I'm curious if based on your success early on in doing the forecasting for 2018, if more people are paying attention to that. It certainly feels like the president might be paying attention to that because his campaigning, the language he uses, the things that he focuses on, it seems like he understands that he needs to stimulate that negative partisanship among his own base. So do you expect that more of the forecasters are going to be including that early on?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I've influenced the forecasting community, but I kind of expected, like after 2018, I mean, I got a lot of blowback leading up to the election as we started to, I say in the original post in July, this will be radical today, but by October, this will be the mainstream forecast. And of course, that's exactly what happened. People were aligned with me, so I wasn't an outlier then. And I expected, like, okay, we have this big wave election. It happens almost exactly the way I predict. The only thing I didn't predict was that Trump was able to, as you just noted, artificially inflate negative partisanship, and that Republican turnout was just terrific, given that they're not being, naturally turned, getting turned out due to being locked out of power the way the Democrats are. I thought for sure, everyone's going to adjust their 2020 stuff, and I'm not going to have the same competitive edge. But I'm not really seeing that in a lot of the coverage. I still see a lot of conversations about, if the Democrats can hold on to their seats. Well, I mean, they're going to hold on to that territory, and 2022 might be a whole different story. But 2020 is not going to be a good year for Republicans in the House.
So I'm curious because this is not a strategy that I personally support, but the apparent strategy among some in Democratic leadership of trying to not rile up Republican voters. So don't focus on impeachment, that sort of thing. Be careful in how you characterize them. Is that actually, in this respect, possibly a good idea electorally in terms of trying not to help Donald Trump in stimulating that negative partisanship amongst Republicans?
Yeah, so the Democratic establishment's concept of electoral behavior, it was at one time an appropriate concept of electoral behavior, but the electorate has changed dramatically, especially in the last 10 years. So that's where my research story begins with my dissertation, and it shows this major change in mass behavior starting in 2009, which is not an accident. But anyway, so what they think that they're doing is the electoral. They think with their plan to, not talk about Democratic policies too too aggressively. If they do talk about healthcare or guns, they talk about it in a very dry, analytical way, not to support impeachment. The reason all of those things are driven, I know a lot of people focus on other things like money and politics, whatever. For me, though, if it made electoral sense to them, they would focus on other things. So they think that the way that they won the House majority is by wooing over disaffected Republicans and moderates to vote for them. The problem with that is, number one, if that was true, my model would not have been predictive. Number two, in a voter file analysis that I'll be releasing, and I've had this confirmed now since I got out on the national scene this last month from multiple sources, in Democratic politics, what happened was a turnout surge of Democrats and different independents, ones that hadn't been voting for Republicans but hadn't been showing up in other midterms, showed up in a big groundswell and voted for these Democrats. And if you don't understand that, if you don't think that that's your target audience, then what Pelosi and Schumer do makes sense, right? I mean, if you think you need Republicans, then you would be dovish on impeachment and do the things that they do, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, in that case, I feel better, and everyone watching this, please send this to Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi on Twitter. But anyway, so I want to turn to 2020. What are you seeing so far?
Yeah, so the irony too, and just to wrap up that last comment, is that not only are those not the way that the Democrats won the House, right, and flipped over Senate seat in Arizona, is it's actually detrimental, the strategy that they're doing, because they're not tapping into the main aggregating motivation in the electorate right now, which is Trump anxiety, okay? And the voter is not going to identify that. If you call the voter or do a focus group, they're not going to say, I am really motivated to vote because I'm anxious about Trump. I mean, people are very poor at reporting their own behavioral motivations. I mean, this is, any psychologist or sociologist should be able to tell you that. And, so they aren't identifying that as a main motivation. They're going to say healthcare, they're going to say, economics, immigration, some issue. But ultimately, what's driving mass behavior right now is this Trump anxiety. And the way that Republicans dealt with that in 2010 is they made that referendum effect on Obama the central piece of their campaign. And, they benefited not only from the natural bump, which is what Democrats are kind of riding on, they enhanced that natural referendum effect. So we don't really know what would happen if Democrats did enhance theirs, because no one's tried that strategy in a competitive race.
Okay. Well, look, I would love to keep in touch with you as we proceed through this election. I want to know before everyone else how this thing is likely to go, as long as it looks good. But anyway, appreciate your work. Congratulations on your success in the last cycle. Dr. Rachel Bitecofer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.